The mockery in the shining heart of the Galactic Council chamber. Thousands of alien voices echoed under a dome of crystal light. It was the yearly summit, a place where the most advanced species gathered to discuss laws, wars, and forbidden research. Today, however, the room was full of laughter. Not because of joy, but because of one ancient topic. The extinct species once known as humans. They called themselves the masters of creativity. One insectoid delegate buzzed, his wings rattling. Yet they destroyed their own planet with their childish wars, added another. A tall being with liquid silver skin, the chamber filled with mocking sounds, each race trying to outdo the other in insults. Humans, they said, were emotional, reckless, and incapable of controlling their own inventions. At the high table sat Commander Zyron of the 7th Dominion, one of the most feared military minds in the galaxy. He leaned back, smiling, his eyes glowing red. They even believed, he said slowly, that they could touch something called the 7th Dimension. The room exploded in laughter, harsh and metallic, echoing against the walls like thunder. 7th Dimension, he continued, when they could barely travel to the outer edges of their own solar system. The Council's archivist floated forward, a being made entirely of light and memory. She projected an image in the air. A small blue planet, once called Earth, surrounded by ruins and dust. This, she said, was the final transmission before the Soul War ended. A broken signal played, human voices shouting, alarms blaring, then silence. The projection faded, leaving behind a soft static hum. Tragic, whispered one elder softly, though even he smiled after. They burned fast. But bright, said Zyron, his tone mocking, like a spark that thought it was a star. No one noticed the faint tremor beneath the floor. Deep in space, far beyond the Council's borders, an old satellite drifted through the darkness. It had been silent for centuries, forgotten by all known civilizations. But now something strange stirred inside it. Its sensors flickered, its old rusted systems powered on. A pulse of energy moved outward, faint but growing stronger with every second. Back in the council chamber, the archivist paused mid-speech, her light flickering. Strange, she murmured. I am detecting a disturbance. Another gravity storm? Asked Zyron, bored. No, she replied slowly. It's coming from the dead sector. From Sol. The room went silent, even the sound of breathing stopped. Impossible, someone whispered. Sol is gone. That system was destroyed ages ago. The lights in the hall dimmed as the central holoscreen activated automatically. A wave of distorted data filled the air, flickering symbols no one could decode. Then a pattern appeared, an energy reading unlike anything recorded before. The archivist's form shook as she processed the impossible numbers. This energy bends space-time itself, she said, her voice trembling for the first time in centuries. An experiment? Zyron asked, though his voice was quieter now. No, she whispered. There is no known technology capable of this. It originates from the exact coordinates of the old human system. For a long moment, no one spoke. The laughter was gone, replaced by an uneasy silence that hung heavy in the air. The council chancellor finally spoke, his deep voice rumbling across the chamber. Send a reconnaissance fleet. We will verify the signal. Outside, in the cold darkness of the galaxy, the council's ships began to move. Their sleek black hulls cut through space like blades of glass, heading toward the dead zone. As they entered the edge of the Sol sector, the stars seemed to shimmer strangely. Sensors malfunctioned, readings looped, and clocks began to tick backward. The captain of the lead ship frowned as the crew reported impossible numbers. Sir, said one, space around us is folding. On the council's live feed, the chancellor watched the data stream collapse into static. What's happening? Demanded Zyron. The archivist's voice was barely a whisper. The fleet is entering an unstable distortion field. Then the transmission cut off, replaced by a single repeating frequency, soft, rhythmic, and oddly familiar. In the deep silence of the chamber, the sound echoed again and again. It was not alien, it was not mechanical, it was human speech, distorted but clear enough to understand. One word repeated over and over. Hello. Every alien in the chamber froze. their eyes wide, their bodies still. The Chancellor leaned forward, voice shaking. "Play it again," he said. The word echoed once more, louder now, resonating across the crystal dome. "Hello?" Zyron's smile vanished, replaced by something he had not felt in centuries: fear. "Impossible," he whispered. "They can't be alive." The archivist's light flickered violently as she read the signal's pattern again. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "The frequency is not just a signal," she said. "It's a dimensional coordinate." The council members looked at her. Confused, she turned slowly, her glowing face expressionless. "They are not just sending a message," she said, her tone trembling. "They are arriving." And for the first time in 1,000 years, the mighty Galactic Council sat in complete silence. No one laughed now, because somewhere, in the dark corner of the universe where humans had vanished long ago, something was waking up. The return, the fleet that entered the Dead Soul sector, was never meant to find anything alive. It was supposed to be a simple mission: record the strange signal, scan the debris and return. But space was not as they remembered it. The stars seemed to move, shifting like reflections on water. Every reading on their screens glitched, looping backward and forward in time. Their communication systems lagged seconds behind their own voices. It was as if reality itself had forgotten how to stay still. Captain Varro of the Council fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Obsidian Crown, staring into the endless black ahead. "Report," he said, voice low and steady. "Sir," his science officer replied, "our coordinates are changing, but we are not moving." Varro frowned. "Repeat that." "We're standing still, Captain, but the universe around us is moving instead." Outside the viewport, the void rippled like a disturbed ocean. Then, a pulse, faint at first, but strong enough to shake the ship's hull. "Was that a shockwave?" Varro asked. "No, sir," the officer whispered. "That came from inside the distortion field." A cold silence filled the bridge. Every alien crew member turned toward the main display. The stars disappeared one by one, swallowed by a slow-moving shadow. Then, in the darkness ahead, something began to form. It was not a ship in the normal sense. It was a shape that shifted every second, one moment long and thin, the next short and wide. Each time it changed, it left behind faint echoes of itself, like reflections on broken glass. The ship seemed to exist in several places at once. The sensors screamed in confusion. Unable to read its mass or speed, Varro took a step back, whispering, "What in the name of the void is that?" Before anyone could answer, a voice came through the static, calm, deep, and unmistakably human. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the USS Paradox," the voice said. "Identify yourselves." The bridge froze, every sound stopped. Varro's mind raced. The language was ancient, recorded in archives, human standard English. "Impossible yet real. This can't be," muttered his second-in-command. "Humans have been extinct for nearly a millennium." Varro swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the display. "Open a channel," he ordered, his voice trembling despite his effort to stay calm. "Unknown vessel," he said. "This is Captain Varro of the Galactic Council fleet. You are entering restricted space." "Identify your origin," the reply came after a pause. The same calm tone. "Our origin," the voice said softly, "is Earth." The word echoed across the bridge like thunder. Some officers gasped, others stared in disbelief. Varro's hands shook slightly as he leaned forward. "Earth no longer exists," he said. "Then," the voice replied, "how do you explain us?" Suddenly the dark ship moved, or rather, it folded. 1 second it was miles away, the next it was hovering directly in front of them. No light came from it, yet it glowed faintly, like the darkness itself was alive. Every instrument on board shut down, even the emergency lights. Only the human voice continued to echo softly through the static. "You came looking for ghosts," it said. "But you found your future," Varro's communication officer whispered. "Sir, I think the signal is transmitting backward in time." Varro turned sharply. "What?" "The message reaches us before they send it," the officer explained. "They're talking from a time ahead of us." Varro's blood ran cold. He looked again at the strange ship, the Paradox. The name suited it perfectly. Fleet Command. "This is Captain Varro," he said into his comm. "We've made contact with an unknown vessel, human origin confirmed. Requesting immediate..." But the message broke apart mid-sentence. When the transmission reached the council, it arrived 3 hours before it was sent. The council chamber filled with shock and chaos. Zarin rose to his feet, slamming his clawed hand on the table. "Impossible," he hissed. "This must be an illusion or a weapon." The archivist studied the signal data, her light trembling. "No illusion," she said quietly. "Their energy signature doesn't exist on any dimensional map." Zarin's voice rose, filled with both anger and fear. "Then what are they?" The archivist hesitated before answering. "They are human, Commander, but they are not bound to our dimensions anymore." Back near the distortion field, the paradox continued to hover silently. Its surface was smooth, yet somehow deeper than metal, like looking into infinity itself. The alien fleet kept their distance, afraid to move closer. Varro's crew could only watch as the impossible vessel began to rotate slowly. Each rotation created ripples in space, bending light, stretching time. Then, as if reality itself bowed to its presence, stars around it dimmed. "Captain," the communications officer said quietly. "We're receiving another message." Varro nodded. "Play it," the voice returned, calm and certain. "We have crossed back to observe," it said. "You mock what you don't understand. But humanity learned to go where physics ends." Varro's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" he asked. The voice paused, then replied, "Nothing you can give. We came to see if the galaxy still remembers us." Then the signal vanished. No explosion, no light, no trace. The ship simply faded. The void around them returned to normal. For a few seconds, the crew stood in silence. Unable to breathe, Varro finally whispered, "Record everything. We're returning." But just as he turned to give the order, alarms blared again. "Sir," shouted an officer, "the paradox is reappearing behind us." Varro spun around in disbelief. The ship was there again, but this time it looked different. Its hull shimmered with patterns of stars, and for a brief moment, shapes moved inside it. Human figures glowing faintly blue. Varro's eyes widened. He heard the human voice one last time. Soft but clear. "You wanted proof," it said. "Now you have it." Then the paradox vanished into a burst of light so bright it painted the stars white. When vision returned, only silence remained. The fleet was drifting, every system offline, every clock frozen. Varro stared into the endless void and whispered the word no alien had spoken in centuries. Humans, and far away, deep in folded space. Captain Elias Ward of the USS Paradox turned to his crew. "They know now," he said, his voice calm and heavy with meaning. "Prepare for observation phase 2. The crew nodded silently, their eyes reflecting stars that didn't yet exist, for humanity had not returned to conquer. They had returned to remind the galaxy what it meant to evolve. The revelation. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with panic. The report from Captain Varro had shaken even the oldest empires. A human ship had been seen, one that could bend reality and defy time itself. No one wanted to believe it. But the data was real. The paradox existed, and it was beyond anything they had ever encountered. Commander Zarin paced the chamber floor, his claws tapping against the glass tiles. "They must be using dimensional illusions," he growled. "Some kind of old human trick." The archivist shook her luminous head. "No illusion," she said softly. "Their signal bends causality. It came from outside the flow of time." The Chancellor looked up from the glowing reports, his face grim. "If the humans have truly returned, we must know what they have become." Outside the Council's borders, the USS Paradox drifted through the dark between galaxies. Its hull shimmered faintly with patterns that no eye could follow. Every second, the ship seemed to fade, then reappear slightly to the left. Inside, the human crew worked in calm silence, surrounded by holographic light and whispering energy. Their eyes glowed faintly blue as if reflecting stars unseen by others. Captain Elias Ward stood before a transparent sphere filled with liquid light. It pulsed with rhythm, slow, steady like a heartbeat. "How stable is the field?" he asked quietly. "Fully synchronized," replied Lieutenant Kyle. a young officer with silver veins running under his skin. The 7th-dimensional core is stable across all folds. Elias nodded. Good, keep it that way. They're watching us now, through the transparent viewport. The galaxy shimmered, a swirl of colors and shifting shapes. Every wavelength of light bent around the paradox, forming rings of energy that rippled like water. This was no normal ship. It was the first vessel ever built inside folded space, where time was not a line but a sea. And humanity had learned to sail it, Captain, Kyle said. The alien fleets are regrouping near the edge of the Sol sector. Elias smiled slightly. Of course they are. Fear makes them predictable. He turned to the main console and opened a communication channel. Galactic Council, he said calmly. This is Captain Elias Ward of Earth's Dimensional Fleet. The message echoed across millions of light years, reaching the council before he had even finished speaking. In the council chamber, the holographic image of Elias Ward appeared. He looked human but different. His body shimmered faintly, like his atoms existed half in another plane. His eyes glowed softly with light, yet his expression was calm and warm. Who are you? Demanded Zirin, voice echoing through the hall. I just told you, Elias replied. I am human. Impossible, shouted another delegate. Humans cannot survive. You burned yourselves out. Elias tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Maybe once, he said, but we learned from our mistakes. The chamber grew quiet as he continued. While your species built empires and machines, we built understanding. We learned that every law of physics is only a door, waiting to be opened. And when we opened the seventh one, we found something that changed everything. He raised his hand, and behind him the stars twisted into impossible shapes. Time and light bent like clay, forming spirals that moved forward and backward at once. The aliens gasped, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. What is that? Whispered the Chancellor. Elias smiled. A glimpse, he said, of the 7th-dimensional flow. You perceive space as 3 and time as 1, but there are more unseen, touching all realities at once. Why return now? The archivist asked, her voice trembling. Elias's face softened. Because we heard you laughing, he said simply. And because you forgot what we were. A tense silence filled the chamber. Then Zirin's voice cut through, filled with anger and fear. You are a threat to the galaxy, he said. We cannot allow you to exist. Elias's eyes glowed brighter, but his tone remained calm. Do what you must, he said quietly. But you cannot destroy what exists outside your universe. Moments later, the council fleets opened fire. Thousands of plasma cannons and dimensional disruptors lit up the void. The blasts reached the paradox in seconds, and then bent. Every beam curved around the human ship like rivers around a rock. The energy twisted back, hitting the attackers with their own fire. Ships vanished in silent bursts of light, folding into themselves inside the paradox. Not a single human moved, Elias simply whispered. We told them not to. In the aftermath, the battlefield was silent. The alien fleets hung motionless, their systems frozen. Elias opened a new channel, his voice steady. We did not return to fight, he said. We came to teach. And to warn. Your wars, your hunger, your fear. They will end the same way ours almost did. He looked straight into the holographic eyes of the council. Do not repeat our path, he said. You won't survive it. The archivist's light flickered weakly. You evolved beyond your flesh, she whispered. Elias nodded slowly. Yes. Humanity became something else. We no longer live only in space or time. We live through them. He gestured toward the stars beyond him. Every thought, every emotion, every memory. They are threads in the same fabric now. Zirin glared at him, trembling with rage. You speak like gods, he spat. Elias turned his gaze toward him, his eyes glowing faintly with both light and sorrow. No, he said quietly, we are not gods. We are the proof that monsters can learn mercy. For a moment, no one spoke. The image of Elias Ward flickered, then faded. Only his final words remained, echoing in the chamber like a whisper of time. The seventh door is open, he said, and humanity is watching. Outside, in the endless dark, the paradox rotated slowly. its surface glowing brighter across distant galaxies. Telescopes and sensors recorded impossible readings, stars bending, time slipping, gravity folding into silence. And then, just like that, the ship vanished again, leaving nothing but a ripple in the void. But the ripple carried one last signal, a soft pulse that repeated across every known communication band. It was a single heartbeat, steady and human. The galaxy heard it, and knew humanity had not returned to conquer. They had returned to remind the universe that it was never alone. The war that never was, the galaxy prepared for war. The Council called it a defensive response, but everyone knew it was fear disguised as courage. Across 1,000 systems, fleets gathered, millions of ships glowing with weapons strong enough to burn stars. The news spread through the spiral arms. Humans have returned. Some laughed in disbelief, some trembled, and some began to pray. Commander Zyron stood at the front of the War Council, his voice sharp and cold. "They are a threat to the natural order," he said. "If humans can break time itself, none of us are safe." The Chancellor listened silently, his face hidden in shadow. The archivist hovered beside them. Her light dim, she spoke softly. "Perhaps the danger is not what they can do, but what they already are." Zyron turned to her, furious. "You think we should kneel before them?" "I think," she said calmly, "you do not understand what you are about to face." Far from the Council, deep in folded space, the USS Paradox floated in silence. Around it, reality shimmered like liquid glass, bending and stretching with every pulse from its core. Inside, Captain Elias Ward stood with his crew around the heart of the ship, a vast sphere of light and moving shadow. "Phase 3 begins now," Elias said quietly. Kale nodded, fingers brushing the holographic controls. "Field expansion ready." Elias took a deep breath. "Then let them see what the 7th dimension truly means." A soft hum filled the ship, deep and low. The light around the crew grew brighter until the walls themselves seemed to breathe. Outside, space rippled, folding over itself again and again within seconds. The darkness turned into a sea of colors no alien eye had ever seen. The 7th-dimensional field expanded, not through distance, but through reality itself. It spread like thought, touching stars, planets, and ships all at once. Back at the Council's fleet, alarms blared. "Massive energy surge," shouted a navigator. "Origin unknown, it's everywhere." Zyron looked at the display in disbelief. The readings were impossible. Light bending backward, time measurements flickering. "What are they doing?" he whispered. The archivist stared into the data stream. "They are showing us what they see," she said quietly. "They are showing us existence beyond our limits." Every ship in the fleet froze mid-flight. Every weapon powered down without a single shot fired. And then the stars began to move. They didn't drift as they normally did. They danced, folding into patterns that formed vast, glowing shapes across the void. It was not an attack. It was art. Entire constellations rearranged themselves into symbols, spirals, hands, eyes, and finally, the outline of a human face. It looked calm, sad, and infinite across the galaxy, on worlds near and far. Billions of beings looked up and saw the same vision in their night skies. No one spoke, no one fought. Even on battle-ready planets, weapons fell silent. The image of the human face gazed down like a memory of something ancient and kind. Inside the Paradox, Elias watched through the viewport. Kyle whispered. "They're afraid." Elias shook his head. "No," he said. "They're beginning to understand." He turned to his crew. "Open channels." "All frequencies," a young operator nodded. Activating every communicator across the galaxy, Elias's voice echoed everywhere at once. "We did not come to destroy your worlds," he said softly. "We came to remind you what you once were. Curious, brave, alive." His words spread like waves, reaching every ship, every planet, every frightened soldier. "We learned that power without wisdom is death," he continued. "We learned that fear makes monsters of us all." On one alien warship, a young pilot whispered to himself, "Why do I feel like crying?" His commander, an older being with scarred skin, lowered his weapon slowly. "Because they sound like truth," he said quietly. Meanwhile, the field expanded again. Now even galaxies beyond the Council's reach began to shimmer. The laws of physics twisted into harmony. energy, matter, and thought vibrating as one. The universe itself seemed to breathe, and for the first time in recorded history, every sentient being felt the same heartbeat. Slow. "Steady, human!" Zyron shouted into his comms. "Fire! End this!" But the ships didn't respond. No one could move. Their weapons simply dissolved into light. The crew members stared at their hands as they shimmered, flickering between dimensions. In their minds, images appeared, flashes of human history. Laughter, pain, war, peace. They saw children running under a blue sky. They saw fire consuming cities. They saw a single hand reaching for the stars. It was not an illusion. It was a memory, shared across species, across galaxies, across time itself. Elias's voice returned, gentle but powerful. "You mocked what you did not understand," he said. "But we have no anger left for you. We became what you feared, and in doing so, we learned compassion." Tears, real and digital, flowed across the council chamber as the broadcast continued. The archivist whispered, "They are rewriting the concept of war." The Chancellor closed his eyes and nodded. "The war that never was," he said quietly. Zirin fell to his knees, trembling. His pride collapsing like dust, he whispered, "We called them monsters." The archivist looked at him gently. "Perhaps they were," she said, "but they learned how not to be." Out in space, the human face faded from the stars, replaced by a single glowing symbol, a spiral turning inward. Then, as the light dimmed, a final pulse spread through the galaxy. Every damaged ship was repaired, every broken satellite restored. Even dying stars brightened slightly, burning with renewed warmth. The 7th-Dimensional wave passed, leaving behind silence and peace. Inside the paradox, Kyle looked at his captain. "Field expansion complete," he said softly. Elias nodded, his expression distant. "Then it is done," he said. "Let them decide what comes next." He turned away from the stars, his reflection flickering between light and shadow. "Prepare for retraction. Humanity has shown them the door." Kyle looked at him curiously. "And if they try to open it?" Elias smiled faintly. "Then maybe," he said, "they'll learn what it truly means to be human." The message silence spread across the galaxy. The war fleets that once filled the void now floated motionless, their weapons dark. Every species that had prepared for battle found itself staring into the quiet between stars. The paradox drifted alone, a small ship surrounded by endless space. Inside, its lights glowed faintly, soft and calm, like a heartbeat slowing after a long struggle. Captain Elias Ward stood before the viewing glass, his reflection shimmering faintly. Kyle approached quietly, holding a tablet filled with thousands of incoming signals. "They're calling us," Kyle said softly. "All of them, the Council, the colonies, even the outer worlds." Elias didn't turn, his eyes fixed on the slow swirl of galaxies outside. "They want answers," he said, "and all we have is the truth." The crew gathered in the main chamber, the heart of the ship still pulsing with the dim light of the 7th dimension. Some faces showed relief, some exhaustion, and some a strange sadness. Dr. Mireya spoke first. The field stabilized across all regions. "No more anomalies." "Good," Elias said quietly. "Then it's time." Kyle frowned. "Time for what?" Elias looked up, his voice steady. "For our final transmission. They had prepared it long ago. Before the experiment began, a message not of power but of memory." He walked to the center console and placed his hand on the glowing surface. The ship's core recognized him instantly, light flaring gently around his fingers. "All channels open," he said. "No encryption, no barriers. Let every world hear this." A low hum filled the air as the transmission began. Across countless worlds, every screen, communicator, and satellite came to life. From the core worlds of the Council to the frozen moons beyond charted space. The same voice echoed. It was Elias Ward, calm, human, and timeless. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the United Terran Federation," he began. "If you are hearing this, then the experiment is complete." His tone carried no pride, no arrogance, only quiet strength. "We reached beyond time not to conquer it, but to understand it," he said. "We sought the edges of existence, and what we found was not power but reflection. On alien worlds, beings paused to listen. Workers stopped their machines. Soldiers removed their helmets. Leaders turned off their microphones. Every language fell silent as the human voice filled the stars. When we vanished centuries ago, Elias continued, we were broken, divided, lost in our own creations. We wanted to see if there was something more, something that could make us better. He took a slow breath. We built the paradox to look into the seventh dimension, to see beyond what life calls real, and there, we found everything. Images began to appear along with his words, not weapons or ships, but memories, children laughing on green fields, oceans shining under twin suns, old cities reborn from ruins. Every world saw them, every species understood. They were not just human images, they were universal truths. Elias's voice grew softer. We learned that every being, no matter the shape or color or world, carries a spark. That spark is not meant to rule or to destroy, it is meant to create. He paused, and for a moment it felt like even the stars were listening. If you fear what you do not understand, then remember, so did we. If you destroy what you cannot control, remember, so did we. But if you learn, if you change, if you grow, then maybe you will understand what it means to be human. On the Council's homeworld, the Chancellor listened with tears in his eyes. Beside him, the archivist bowed her head as the words echoed through the chamber. In the war fleet, Commander Ziran sat alone, the cold metal of his weapon forgotten beside him. He whispered, they could have erased us, but instead, they taught us. Back aboard the Paradox, Kale watched the data flood through the systems. Every channel is responding, he said quietly. Millions of acknowledgements. They're listening. Elias smiled faintly. Then it's enough, the message continued. We leave behind no empires, no demands, no victories, Elias said. We leave behind a truth that every civilization has a choice. To rise through fear or through understanding. And when you look up at the stars and wonder where we went, he added softly, know this, we never left. At those words, the paradox began to shine brighter. The crew stood silently as the walls dissolved into waves of light. The 7th-dimensional field reactivated, not as a weapon, but as a bridge. Space folded around them like a closing book through the viewing glass. The stars bent and formed a single white line stretching into eternity. Kyle turned to Elias, his voice trembling. Where will we go? Elias smiled gently, his eyes reflecting the light. Everywhere, he said, and nowhere. We've become part of what we sought to understand.